Oh, yes. Let's go ahead and ask Dr. KOFI if he could offer a prayer for us as we get started with this meeting. And
you have to unmute yourself. You want to come over here and do it? Huh? Can you hear KOFI? You can't.
Not yet. We can't hear him.
Come sit beside me and do it. They can hear me. You can hear me, right?
Yes, ma'am.
We can hear you.
KOFI, come sit here.
Come sit next to the pretty
I'm in another room.
CAROLYN Kennedy. Yeah.
I'm on my lap computer. And I'm having a heat treatment on my arm. I'm having pain.
Yes.
That's probably what I need. I need to get that heat treatment going.
Okay, you said I should pray.
There you go. All right.
Oh, eternal and everlasting Father, you've been around. You just came on the scene to see what is going on. And our ancestors who have been here longer know what is going on. So we come before the two of you, the Almighty God and our ancestors, both here in this Indian land and Africa, to bring us together because we are one people. We've been confused by these Europeans and Arabs. But what can we do? You're the only one who can make us understand what we are doing. Give us everlasting life, make us go long enough to pass it on to our children and their children and their children, so that they will understand that this life is not as easy as it seems. We pray in the name of all the gods in America and in Africa. Thank you very much, God.
Amen.
Amen.
And point of information, Albert?
Yes.
Do you mind if while we could hear Mr. KOFI, if you can give us your your title and a little bit of information before you go back to listening, sir?
Oh, okay. I am from Gold Coast, which is now called Ghana. And I'm a tribe of Ashantis in Ghana. It has been a very serious life for me. When I was young, I thought it was that easy with the Ashantis and all their kingdoms and their gold and their diamonds. Never knew anything called poverty until I traveled here at the very tender age. Very young, I came in 1962. My father was very grateful to send me during the time of Nkrumah making mess of Ghana, thinking that he can unite the people. It didn't work that way. The people were more knowledgeable than he thought, so they didn't go along with him. They went along with their tribes, their countries. In the long run, Ghana went back to where the British left us. So I have been here going to school at Temple University. I graduated playing soccer. That's where I learned what is called discrimination. Play soccer, and Pete, our coach, never gave me a dime when all the white boys had scholarships and all the black boys didn't have any. But anyhow, I came to Howard Law School in Washington, and I've been here since then. We thank God I got understanding between the indigenous people of this world and the Europeans and the Arabs in this world. You have to learn to live together to build this world for ourselves and our children. Children. Thank you very much. Oh, I formed Sons and Daughters of Africa to bring the indigenous people in 1970 to understand that this world is serious. Europeans are descendants of the Romans, and they can easily kill. They kill themselves and they kill anybody in their way. Then I met Hesha 2015, and we exchange numbers, and we get started in 2019. And now I met John Moss and the native of this country here, and I'm very happy. Send pictures that I'm dealing with. I'm the chairman of the African Diaspora Directorate. I'm the chairman of Sons and Daughters of Africa. These are the only two things I would do the rest of my life. I'm 83 years old. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I like
Thank
how
you,
you
Dr.
mentioned
Kofi.
you came here, Mr. Kofi, at the tender age in 1962.
Yes.
That was the year I was born, sir. As I come up on my birthday in November, I'm like, oh, I'm feeling. But
You always remember me now.
I always remember you, sir, and Mrs. Kennedy and Albert. Blessings. Anyway, I thank you for doing that, Albert. Back to you, sir. I just thought while he was on the line.
I really appreciate the prayer that was offered. You know, I think there's a distinct difference between how we indigenous peoples honor our ancestors. And that I think is a very distinct difference between us and, you know, those who are not part of the indigenous peoples, because we still honor our ancestors. We acknowledge their presence. They may not be here physically, but we know that they are here spiritually. And it is with that knowledge that it gives us strength to keep doing what we are doing, because, you know, everything, as you mentioned, is under the control of God. And what happens, it goes in they go in cycles. So we understand in the history, there were a lot of very, very prosperous kingdoms that came out of Africa, because Africa is full of minerals. Africa, for whatever reason, God blessed it with with a lot of gold and a lot of, precious things. And I believe, because we're from the South Pacific, but our stories, we talk about voyaging, because that's what we do. We travel. The ocean was our highway. So there's no doubt in my mind that we went to South America, we went to Asia, and we went to Africa. Because if you go along the west coast of, the east coast of Madagascar, there are very Polynesian names on the west coast of Madagascar. Those, I don't know why they have those names, but those names are Polynesian.
Mm.
And so there's, in the history, we were interacting. I don't think that's something that, we will learn and that's probably something that we as an indigenous movement should start gathering, all of these stories, all of this history that is not being taught to our children. We're being taught the history of, like you mentioned, the Romans. We're being taught the history of, the Europeans. But we're not being taught our own history, which is as valuable and as amazing as anything that's happened north, in the North Country. So just want to say thank you, Dr. Kofi. That was a very inspiring prayer. I know John and Carolyn also can testify how important it is that we acknowledge our ancestors, which I am always grateful for my ancestors who led the way and they paved the road for us to travel on. So I just wanted to say that very honored to meet you and to make your acquaintance. We must always be proud of our ancestry, your Ashanti tribe. I'm always very, I talk to John all the time, and what is your chief name? What is the chief title that your family and in your tribe? So, because these are things that identify who we are. We are identified by our chiefs and by our tribes, and we have positions. These tribes are just not just group of people. No, they're very well organized. They are very well. There's hierarchies.
More than they think.
Very, very complex hierarchies in these tribes. So when you understand how these tribes work and how they interact, I think that's probably part of the issue, because we have to go back to our tribes when we can't communicate on a specific level, which is an interregional level or whatever you want to call it. If it's between the Native Americans and the Polynesians, I would expect that their chiefs and our chiefs get together and they would set the agenda. Same with yours. The African tribes, their chiefs with the chiefs of the other tribes get together and they form alliances. It's through that hierarchy of indigenous organizations. Our organizations, trust me, we had democracy way before the white man did. We were practicing democracy. We might not have called it democracy, but that was how that was the system that we were working under, because everybody was represented in the chief council. The chief council was separated by families. Each family had their chief in the chief council. So that's a more, in my estimation, a more efficient democracy. But, we don't get any credit for it. But that's how, that's something that we need to reestablish. These are, we've used these systems for thousands of years and they've worked. So now we're trying to use another system. It's foreign to us. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work for us. And that's why we kind of lose our power, because we're giving the power over to, some kind of government. But yeah, that's my spiel for today.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Inspiring. The Ashanti united in 1696. They formed a union, as you were talking about. From that day until now, even a woman fought for years until fought the British. The man wants the golden stool, which is the only stool in the world full of gold, nothing else but gold. It takes 6 men to carry it. And the governor said, I want the gold, I want to sit on. He wanted to steal it.
Yeah.
And when it was interpreted to the queen, she said, what? That golden thing nobody sit on. He went to the room, took a gun and shot the governor and killed him.
Where did the stool come from? Huh? Where did the golden stool come from? It
came from heaven. Our priest, our high priest commanders called Okomfanochi, commanded it from heaven to come and govern us. And he did. And up till now, we still have it. It takes six men to carry the golden stool. Nobody sits on by the queen, by the king. But he sits on a special occasion. If you sit on without that special occasion, He's the throne. Speaks out. Oh, yes.
Amazing.
Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
The golden spoon.
So, point of order, I just want to jump in here real quick. Is first I want to recognize Mr. KOFI and Albert. I like how you have matching haircuts. So, so looks good. So, just being that Herschel Daniels, his medical challenge that he has to take care of, he won't be on the call. And Albert, our managing director, we didn't get a agenda for today's short meeting, but if Albert, you could just introduce yourself and your background, and then I'll do so, and then CAROLYN, and then after that, we'll go to news report updates, and anything else, of course, that you would like to. I'm just acting as, parliamentarian, as well as founder of Indigenous Peoples Plan under the sponsorship of Indigenous Peoples Alliance, where Herschel Daniels and I have asked our honored talking chief, Albert, with his vast background and knowledge and networking, to help manage by being managing director. So with that, Albert.
Well, I'm honored to be put in this position. I am a talking chief for my family in Samoa. The talking chief name is Namula Ulu. And in terms of, each of these titles have a specific range of how far they can go. So when the nation of Samoa comes together, there's two parties. There's Pule and there's Tumua. I represent Pule. So we're from there's two main islands. There's Savaii and Upolu. So I represent the big island of Savaii. So when we come together as a nation, I'm the one who talks for our people on the big island. And then there's chiefs for Upolu from Leu Moena and Luffy Luffy. So those are, and that's why I say, we come from very well organized systems. We're familiar with systems. Systems are something that we've developed and we've grown up with. I was born in New Zealand. Then we moved to Samoa, and I grew up in Samoa till I was 21. And then I served a mission for the Mormon Church. And then after that, I went to Hawaii. I came to Hawaii in 1978, and I attended BYU Hawaii. And after that, I graduated and I went to Western State University College of Law in Fullerton. And I graduated in '86, worked in a lot of different law firms in Los Angeles and Honolulu and in Japan. I actually worked in Japan for a while. And so, but I ended up going into the media. So media has been sort of where I went, and that was where I understood the power of social media and how to create movements and how to, move people, or gather people and to gather networks. It's very important that we understand the new technology that's available, and we have to understand that there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. So, some people think, this indigenous movement or the movement for the Africans or the movement for whatever race has to go only one path. There's ways that we can accomplish what we need to accomplish, and I think what we're discussing and what Herschel has introduced is a very effective way. If we can access the funding, we can create a new reality. That's basically what I'm hoping that we can do as members of the indigenous peoples, that we work together through the African diaspora and also African Union, so that we can work together. Like I said, in days gone by, we were all communicating. This is, nowadays people want to say, oh, nobody, no, we were doing this, way before Columbus and those guys. They only got the courage to go past the horizon in the 1600s. We were doing this maybe in the early, hundreds AD, or even before then. That was what we were doing. So I'm very sure we visited everywhere. So it's just a pleasure to be with you guys, and that's basically who I am. Thank you.
Thank you. And go a little bit out of order. If you don't mind, I'd like to have ladies first. Director Kennedy, do you mind going next and telling us about yourself and your involvement, and then I'll just do my part next.
Do not mind. My name is CAROLYN Kennedy. I was born and raised in North Carolina. My ancestors were African and Indian, and I went to college in North Carolina, and I got my master's degree at Howard University in Washington, D.C. in social work management and administration. I've spent more than 30 years working in the social work field in management and administration, directing mental health treatment centers, community-based organizations, and for 20 years I ran group homes for disabled children in Maryland, which is right near DC. And I just retired last year, and I'm delighted to have joined the Africa Diaspora Directorate to serve as the executive director to continue and to help build the Black Folks Plan. I'm committed to service to my people, which is why I chose social work. And I'm delighted to continue working with AFDIDI and Indigenous People Forum. So that's it, that's me.
And you're also an honored member of the World Conference of Mayors in this historical Black towns and settlements. And they've really taken on support of handling our social meetings at this point. And
yes,
we certainly appreciate the time of you letting people in and being here and setting up the meetings. Can I also ask that you please send an email out to everybody from the FAU meetings, from Andrew all the way through everybody, to attend our meetings. And as they join, we'll remind them of our protocols, and that I am parliamentarian, that we will, again, because as we grow in a limited time, we want to stay to our time, and we'll have a pre-agenda that we'll be following as we add more people. This has been kind of a get things going because there's been so much going on in our upcoming Indigenous Peoples Day, which we really needed to be ready for on our end, similar to like we helped get Juneteenth ready for that event. Can you please email that to everybody and CC Albert and I, make sure we're all on that, please?
I can do that.
Thank you so much. So with that, I'll just continue from here, Albert, if that's all right, just to introduce
Yes.
myself, and then I'll report. So my name is John Thomas Moss. I'm the grandson of Caddo, Caddo, Caddo Nation tribal chief from out of Oklahoma now. And Michael Martin was his white given name, Indian name, White Moon. And his um, actor artist name, because he's a self-taught world-renowned artist as well, is Silver Moon. So Chief Silver Moon is my grandfather, and my mother, Colleen Janelle Martin Moss, raised my two brothers and I on her own predominantly with help of my full-blooded Irish grandmother. And together, in growing up predominantly in Southern California, my mother helped start the Southern California Indian Center with my cousin, who's also a board member, honored senior board member, Randy Edmonds, grandson of Randlet Edmonds. He's on the Kiowa roll, and another brothering tribe out here in Oklahoma. And he's on the and he's Caddo as well. So he's Caddo in Kiowa, and many honored family members. Matter of fact, his daughter Rhonda is the vice chairman of the Kiowa Indian Tribal Nation. So we're doing our best to network and work with everybody, which is why my main background has been world renowned in sales training and business development. I wrote a book called The Millionaire Loan Officer, working in the business mortgage arena. And in that, helped oversee monitoring calls, listening to calls, coaching on calls. I don't know, probably over 100,000 physical phone calls. And in that, building and working with Fortune 100, 500 companies, and also from very small companies growing and in call centers, data centers all over the world, to prove my methodologies are applicable with any education level, as long as we have open communication skills with ability to listen and learn, not just hear what people are saying, but listen, meaning, why is this being said to me and what does it mean? And in that, it's why I have respect of everybody on these calls. Mrs. Kennedy is an example with her background in social work. That's part of what I studied. I learned speaking or signing sign language, American ASL, American Sign Language, and working with special needs people and others. And with that, it relates to, like everybody has said, Albert and so forth, we have been working around or utilizing some form of systems, and that's really what this Indigenous plan is about. There's funding available through the pools of incomes that have been out there for funding from World Development Banks, IMF funds, private public partnerships. And these dollars, Biden and Obama said 2 terms ago, before they got in, help us get in. We realize there's underserved, underbanked people that we need to correct this inadequacies and racism, and we're going to do it. We will cut the checks. Well, they didn't. And some positive things happened with Trump, but not enough, as we all know. And now we're waiting to see that Biden, as he said he will do, but we must keep the pressures on to help encourage him to make the right choices through an informed decision. And that really is what these calls are about, is that we have to be ready, because if they say we're going to cut the check, just as you and your family, if you decide to help out a brother or a sister, right? Or you want to know, how is the money going to be used? How are we going to track how the money is going to be used? How do we know before we give you as an example, $10,000? We give you 2,000 to start. Before we give you the next 2,000, we want to quantifiably know that the game plan you laid out has been followed, and therefore you deserve the next 2,000, and so on and so forth. When you don't have what the government refers to as shovel-ready projects and have a set plan, they look to the next qualified person that is going for similar funding. And everybody should realize there's many people that are always willing to take money and show they're ready. So that's what we must do. And that's why we need everybody's sharing of networks and input and organization of sending questions, Q&A, or support ideas via email, so that it can be deciphered and then discussed via an agenda, so that in limited times that people make to be on these Zoom calls, we're moving forward with positive actions. And again, these calls are every Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time via this Zoom link. And then everybody should always be putting, every single time, their information into the chat so that we can document, because there's going to be a point where the government, just as in past funding that I've worked with, well, how big is your organization? How many people are listening to what you're saying? How many people are involved? If we give you money, is it going to get distributed properly? And do you have enough bandwidth that it's going to really make a difference? Well, we need more than 4 people on a call, and we may have people on by phone, but the reality is we want to, like, I have my own Zoom meetings that we may roll over to CAROLYN, only because in time we want to have so many people on the call. We need to have a larger audience, just like I did back in the banking. So that's really just an overview of why I was asked to speak as also the president of the Southwest Native American Indian Chamber of Commerce, which I am the president of, by one of the leaders, the actual chairman of the Comanche Nation, Cornell Potawatomi, who is also an honored elder, and to speak on Indigenous Peoples Day with the organization he founded, which is actually called Indigenous People, right? But not what we have, Indigenous Peoples Plan. That is what I called it, and Herschel agreed, and we went with that name side by side with the Black Folks Plan. And that's why I do my best to attend all meetings, as I hope everybody will as well. So with that, on Indigenous Peoples Day, here's the update. We had events that went on all morning. There's a picture here of me speaking on the steps of the Lawton City Hall. And along with that, one of the other speakers was the actual mayor of Lawton, the Honorable Mayor Booker, who spoke, who will also, I hope, be joining us with the World Conference of Mayors in working with Indigenous people. And so he and I are following up on that. And then we also had the chairman of the great Comanche Nation speak, Mark Walbetty, I know I'm saying his last name wrong, but he's also an honored military veteran. And then of course, Vice Chairman Dr. Cornell, who spoke and is also a veteran. And then what happened, like all Indigenous events, we started with the posting of the colors, which were walked in by honor guard, military Native veterans. And then after that, we opened with the opening prayer. And then from the opening prayer, we went to updates of what Indigenous Peoples Day is about and some of that history. And then we went to the speakers. And Mayor Booker gave an actual proclamation regarding Indigenous People Day, officially recognized by the city of Lawton, Oklahoma. So we're grateful for his ongoing support. Then the Comanche chairman, Mark, shared a lot of the great things that they're working on and towards, and they're right here in the city of Lawton. So we're grateful for that, who also they represent what is known as the three other main tribes working together in the community is the Apache, the Kiowa, and the Comanche. So with that, the other tribes, of course, but those three names are actual organization, just like in the Anadarko area, we have what's known as the WCD, which is the Wichita, Caddo, and Delaware. So just for, again, where more than one is gathered, ideally more strength comes. So with that, then I spoke about my grandfather being groundbreaking in the entertainment industry, the first Native American to receive a ongoing, reoccurring role as a leader in the silent film industry. And then also he traveled around the world sharing cultural stories and songs and dances. And predominantly he did a lot of that in New York, which is later why he ended up in Hollywood. So with that art, he was sharing, because some would criticize him, that he was accepting of some of the non-native ways, wearing a suit, his hairstyle, so forth. Yet he was of the mindset, if we don't educate ourselves on the invaders and what positive things we can learn from that and move forward, yet never giving up our cultures, our medicines, our dances, or our women, beliefs of how we protect our women with our lives, etc., then we're not following creator's laws, period. There's man-made laws and there's creator spirit given laws. And I choose to follow creator. So that's, and as most of us do. So I shared that and how that tied in with the great Comanche chief, Quanah Parker, who I admired from everything I'd learned, and was also a subject of many of my grandfather's paintings. Quanah Parker was, just in brief, I talked about how, and I elaborated on it, but how he was known, they say, to walk in two worlds, the white man's world and the Native American world. He wore suits, he wore his hair, but didn't change his braids. He proudly shared respectfully the way it's done. His 8 wives, yes, 8 wives, same time. And along with that, he was the first to go to Washington and start negotiating for Native American Indian lease land rights for the tribe to start making some dollars. Now, this is around him having a phone. He bought a motor car, and he started, was one of the main starters of the Native American Indian Church, and maintain that we have to maintain our beliefs, our culture, our dances, our hairstyles, which respect our beliefs. In many cases, some wear it long, some wear it shorter, but each has their beliefs. And when someone passes, in many cases, they will cut their hair braids off and regrow it, so forth. But there's more to it, but culture, I won't share that publicly right now. But all those things is what he emphasized, and we have to step forward, not live in the past, and not stay stagnant. And that is what I'm passionate about, is that, and I shared, we have to move forward. And I shared many of the, because there were Caddo, Kiowa, Apache, Delaware, many of the Samoan brothers and sisters as well. I met some, as well as Pacific Islanders that attended, and we shared. And also we have an Asian community. Again, we are in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, so we're right near a very well-respected military armory base. So there's a lot of mixed communities, which is great. So, and good food. So, so around that, I just emphasize that with our backgrounds, we have to move forward and not always bring up the generational trauma that many of our relatives and parents went through, and or we still go through in some format based on the color of our skin or our name that we carry. And people make assumptions. And if you don't know the assume rule, like I do in my sales training, write the word assume, and then you put a line in between the ASS and the U, another line, and then you have ME. So don't assume anything, or you end up making typically an ass out of you and me. So just remember, and I know it's a little to the point, but the reality is we have to share and work towards moving forward. And that's why I mentioned, I said, many of you have seen me at tribal meetings since 2010, when I presented the same type of projects for housing, community development, financial literacy. And here we are, 2021, and it hasn't happened. Why? Because you're letting politics and people that are in office afraid of losing their, getting reelected, so to speak, not making the proper moves. And who suffers? Our elders, our children, and our futures. And look at what has happened. Yes, there's been positive things that we want to look to, but the reality is how much more would, could have, and should have been accomplished. And people agreed and shook their hand. And again, with the events going all day, I was honored that so many elders and others came up to me, and some even with tears in their eyes, thanking me for saying the truth and not trying to hide it, sweep it under the rug. They said, we need warrior strength. We need help. I said, I understand. And when my son came out the week prior with his girlfriend to visit, and I drove them around the tribal housing developments, communities, and ours is not as decimated as most of the tribal reservations. Coming from Huntington Beach, California, he was like, "Oh my gosh, we got to change this, Dad. Now I have a better understanding. Thank you for doing this." I said, "Son, this is not anything near what we've seen in South Dakota, North Dakota, and a lot of the other areas where people don't even have running water. We have elders older than the Honorable Mr. KOFI, who've never been able to wake up in the morning and make a pot of coffee with fresh running water, take a shower, have a bath." And when you think about the heat and conditions they live in, may God forgive America. Sorry. So those are things I touched on that we need your help. Get involved, speak up, bring leaders, bring business, bring sponsorship, bring donations, but we need to get the word out. And I'm grateful for the news media a little bit, seeing more about Indigenous Peoples Day that has been recognized and shared throughout Canada, New York, the islands, etc. But we have to keep the momentum moving. And with that, I respectfully have it. If anyone has any questions about Indigenous Peoples Day and what it meant, and again, I just want to share the ending event. We had recognitions, powwows, dances, people that came from all over, even from the Indian Native American movie, Res Dogs. They made it out to celebrate with us, and everybody was fed some good old Oklahoma barbecue and greens and all the victuals. And everyone went home spiritually fed, emotionally fed, and so forth. And that's our way, as it is many of our cultures. I look forward to going to Samoa, because I know similarly we'll go through a lot of those wonderful things, even though I'm not as much of a fish fan as I am of barbecue beef, but it's all good. Anyway, so thank you. And again, I'm John Moss, and in the chat, please, you can click on the link. You can go to our website at cashcommunitydevelopment.org, and you can see the actual Indigenous written out plan with funding that is there. And I do want to emphasize to everybody that whether checks are cut, sorry, I'm realizing I have tears running down my eyes here. If checks are not, for whatever reason, cut by some of the political government leaders that are out there, we still have public-private partnerships like with PNC Bank, managed with NCRC and others. That is going to happen. We still must be ready. And that's what I want to emphasize. The next meeting we have, ideally, we have a step-by-step agenda. Here's our backbone. Here's our skeleton. This is what we need. Here's the next. What do we have someone bringing to the table for, like myself, with housing and financial literacy and other networks that I have? But again, some won't come unless there's money and support because of their timelines. But those of us that can step up and help build the structure, because like I say in my training classes, if you're going to be building a home, no matter how high you build it, you still have to have what? A firm foundation. So we're building the firm foundation in a blueprint game plan. Otherwise, like the builders, the city planning commission isn't going to sign up on a building unless it meets all the guidelines. We're not going to get funding unless it meets all the scrutiny guidelines and prejudices we have to overcome. So this is a war, modern day war with many battles. So please warrior up with us and let's make good things happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody?
Any questions? But Albert, you have your phone is muted.
Well, I have a quick question since you discussed the Indigenous Peoples Day and the good food. Let me ask Dr. KOFI a question. Are you there, Dr. KOFI?
Yes, he's here.
Because we don't have elephants in Samoa. And when it comes to food, we what?
Excuse me, he has to come over here.
Okay. Well, it's a rhetorical question. So, I think
He can
anybody,
hear you, but
yeah,
yeah.
anybody can answer this question.
Okay.
But I wanted to address him because this is an animal that is unique to, well, it's not unique,
Go
but
ahead. Go
it's
ahead.
from Africa. Yeah. How do you eat an elephant, Dr. KOFI?
The whole town. The whole town come and take a piece.
But it's one bite at a time, right?
Oh no. It takes weeks, months, sometimes a year. At least it takes about 2 months to cut it into pieces.
Yes.
With,
That's a very good point that you make, Dr. KOFI, because we are starting something here. And we need to, cut it into small pieces so that we can all eat it and understand what we're doing.
yeah.
I think one step we need to make from here to the next meeting, everybody invite 5 people to this meeting next Thursday. Now, I know I have had a lot of my people on, but I think because I lost my phone yesterday, they were probably calling me to see if the meeting was on and they couldn't get through. So that's probably why they're not here.
Right. All the people, all the friends are here.
But if we can, John, if we can invite 5 people, because we need to build this discussion, even though it's just a discussion at this point. But from these discussions, we will develop a plan of action. For lack of a better word, we need a plan of action that we can do small things. We don't need to do big things, right? To start it off, and I've been in a movement where we started 3 years ago. It was just 4 of us, just like in this meeting. There's only 4 of us here today. 3 years later, the government was changed. We removed a 40-year regime that was in power for 40 years, but it started with 4 people. And we did small things, but there were a lot of different activities that we did along the way, including protests, including social media, including we did education. So there, fundraising, but it started small, but we did small steps at a time until we got to the point where we were so powerful that the government that was in power was removed. So I'm just saying this is similar in terms of we know the money is there. And what John said really hit me hard because I saw a list of the counties and the cities that had benefited from a lot of this money, similar to the PNC and other banks that were making the money available. You know which cities here in San Diego made the most money or were able to take most of that money? Carlsbad. Carlsbad is like the richest. Those guys, that's where what's his name, the guy in charge of Bill Gates, I think Bill Gates lives over there. So it's
It's because
One of his homes, yes.
one of his homes. But one of the what I think is really important here is we need to be able to create the shovel-ready projects. The projects have to be, they have to fit a certain criteria, and I think that's probably going to be our emphasis moving forward, is that we are going to, through this network, and if we continue to expand the people in this call, there's going to be people with projects. And what we should be is like a clearinghouse where they come in, we examine their project, we make sure all the T's are crossed and all the I's dotted, and it matches the criteria. Because like John said, there's a lot of other people, and they're not in our criteria. They're not poor, they're not indigenous, but they sure know how to write a proposal, and that's the thing. That's the thing that's separating us from that money, is because these guys, these developers, are coming in with a project, and that project doesn't benefit any of the indigenous people. It doesn't benefit, Carlsbad, you have to have a $2 million home to live in Carlsbad. So I don't understand how they got so much of the money. But that's the reason, like John was saying, there's a lot of other people who are waiting in the wings. If we don't have it, then they get it, because that money has to be spent. So I would say, let's start small. Let's invite people to our meetings every week on Thursday. And then we'll start designing a plan of action where we can start, raising awareness. Things of that. Awareness is a very big part of this whole thing. If we're going to start a movement, awareness is probably the most important piece of this, because when people become aware that there's an issue,
then they'll get concerned.
Then they get involved. Yes. But having said that, is there any other questions for John regarding what he?
And the meat of the elephant must be cut in small for everybody to eat.
Yes, that is one of the sales analogies I always use. When you're trying to help someone with the problem or challenge, as Ms. Kennedy knows, you have to listen to their whole story, but you don't try and address it all in one clump. You take it one bite at a time, help them, and realize that there has to be a development process. And again, in that, as Albert eloquently put it, is that in these projects that are out there, as people are looking for funding and development, when they look at who has the funding dollars and the projects, those dollars that, again, when they're submitted, those are out there for many, many people. But the guideline we must keep in mind is indigenous people is the most underserved. We have preference. So in these projects, we have preference to, let's say there's 10 people going for the same dollars, but the preference goes to the most underserved, which are us, indigenous peoples. And that is overseen through the banking guidelines that are out there. So we have to keep that in mind, know our strength, know our cumulative power. But again, yes, Albert, inviting more people and sharing, we definitely need to do. And that's like you guys probably all got my email where I invited several other people that, again, at the Indigenous Peoples Day, I want to know more. How can I help? Join us on this call. Now, short notice, they're not here right now today, but by next week, we need to have an agenda. And as we grow, we'll probably need to have other breakout sessions where, once a month, we have a meeting now related to what are the bank challenges, who's helping with that, what are the disabilities, so forth. But reality is it's all on, it has to be an urgency because these dollars are right there. And there's been times in the past where people think it's going to be a while. And next thing you know, they said is, who's got shovel ready projects? Well, a lot of the tribal leaders went through that where they weren't moving as quick. And when they said, who's ready? Guess who was ready? Some of the tribes that had money that didn't even need the money because they already had money, but they won the projects. And then the poor little me, so to speak, native indigenous saying, well, what about us? Ready. We told you to be ready and you weren't. So, you snooze, you lose. So anyway, that's my last thought. And if anyone has any other questions or things to add, otherwise, Albert, I think we should do our closing prayer.
Wants to say something.
Yes.
I want to say this.
You guys' camera, we just see green figures, but
From what Albert was saying, it came into my mind that when I was reading the life of Christ, Jesus Christ, of these white people, I realized that he was using a method that my people in my town and my village were using in educating us when you were babies. They use drums, they use sound, music, they use dances, and each of the elders would tell a story, all right, to us. And when I was reading the life of Christ, it dawned on me, I said, oh, and then when I went to college reading Socrates, Aristotle, and all those people, they were having people, and the one or two people were following. And then the next time there was another one, about 4 of them, then 6. And then as they tell the story, people begin to know what they are talking about and how interesting the story is. It is the story that drew these people around to them. For example, in Jesus Christ, he tells the story of the parable of a farmer, or a parable of a woman. Any story that is derived from the community, you see? So the people could relate to the community. So when there were 4 people, the next time there will be 8 people, and they come. And the news goes to the people. And in our case, the children, we were children, we heard the story. Some of the story was so scary that you fall asleep, scared. You see, and then they have to lift you up to your home. Eventually, people begin to come together, and behold, in about a year, the whole town was assembling at 6 o'clock in the evening. The drummers were drumming, and things were going on, and stories were telling. Well, I formed organization in 1970. I used that tactics. It worked. But you see, the Europeans have what I call saboteurs. People, when they see a group, will send somebody to come there. For example, one man came to our meeting and he said, let's go and kill the whites. Just that. And I said, what's your name? I am Original Mind. I said, that is not a name. What is your real name? Bob Johnson, he said. I said, okay, that's Bob Johnson. But why are you telling us this? What is the population of the blacks in America here? At that time, he said 15 million. I said, how's the population of whites? He said 100 million. I said, how do you expect 15 million to go and fight 100 million? Please walk out, go away. You came to destroy us. And he walked out, but he planted a negative seed and backfired on us. And it dwindled and dwindled, and lo and behold, you were about 300 people. It came to about 60. That's it. The organization was gone. just one negative seed the man planted. You got to think about that.
No.
Throughout our history, the whites have been expert finding those who would divert mission of freedom that we're seeking. There's always someone willing to sell out.
Mhm.
And we just have to find a way to overcome that because that is not new. It's always been there and it's still here.
All right.
We just have to find
It's
a way
over
to
to you all.
overcome
Let's
it.
think about all that.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
Good night.
good night.
Thank you for
Thank
sharing
you.
that. Wait, this is John. I want to add to that real quick. You bring up something I wanted to bring up on today's meeting too. We all should also have a moment of thanks that, and people need to remember that today is when Martin Luther King Jr. received the Nobel Peace Prize. And similarly, you know, people gathered, even though he said similar words and similar stories as many other people behind the podium, so to speak. His charisma and the way he did it and added his own flavor or spirituality to it, people gravitated to that. And that's what we need to find is our voice to, as indigenous peoples, plan and alliance, to have people come here respectfully and how can we improve our world. And like you said, some are scared of the stories. Well, the reality is we need to be. We have so many things going on with global tragedies, and even right now as we head into Christmas and people behind in debt, they're talking about how do we keep stuff on the shelves and how do we keep our ports moving and our truckers. And you know, John Deere today had 5,000 people go on strike, and along with that you have the sheriff of Los Angeles County, the largest policing units out there, breaking the order that he has to fire anybody that hasn't had their shots. So there's a lot of chaos going on that we all need each other, the non-native, the non-indigenous, if you will, the WASP people, so to speak. They need our knowledge and help, just as in Nicodemus in Kansas, when the people were starving, the Potawatomi tribe came forward to help them, similarly as, you know, Columbus, who was lost, and others, right? Our good-hearted nature of doing what we know, you know, the similar question you've heard from Christian people say, well, what would Jesus do? Well, ask yourself that. What would you do? What should you do? People know. The difference is you have to be able to be strong enough to make the right choice and live with it. So with that, I just wanted to add that about Martin Luther King, because I see so many people not even talking about that. What a great achievement that happened for a person of color that was respected by most, even if in his time, just like Da Vinci, people didn't always recognize it, but later they're like, wow, what a genius. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Good night.
Good night, Dr. Kofi. And thank you very much, Carolyn.
We need a closing prayer, someone.
Before we close, I just also want to say thank you very much, John, for what was discussed today. I had a thought that I wanted to close on, but it's kind of flowing out of my head. However, you know, I believe that if we continue to add people to our meetings and we start having a set agenda, I think this meeting will become more productive and we will be able to start some momentum. All we need is a little bit of momentum. Once we get that ball rolling, and then it's very hard to stop it. So like what, that's what I was saying, like what Dr. KOFI was saying, a lot of the things that, Jesus Christ preached, we don't know what happened between when he was a teenager till he was 30 years old. He, according to a lot of stories, he was traveling. So whether he went to Africa, whether he went to Ireland, whether he went to Asia, but he picked up a lot of information and a lot of knowledge. So that's why he was able to communicate with the people, because he had that firsthand knowledge and knew what resonated with the people. But that's sort of our job now, is to create a message that will resonate with our people, that will unify them, and that will empower them. And please, we don't have to apologize anymore for being Indigenous. No way. We have to be proud of who we are. We have to stand strong for who we are, for our people and for our children. And having said that, John, could you close us with a word of prayer?
I'd be honored. And thank you again, everyone, for attending. And as we grow, and keep in mind, we do have documentation that is in place. So even though we're talking right now and not having action steps behind the scenes, there are action steps. We just need to empower those. That's all. All right. So, Creator, we humbly come to you with open hearts, minds, and spirit, thanking you first for all of the blessings we have, even though we have challenges comparatively to our wonderful ancestors who guided us here. We have, in so many ways, other blessings of a roof over our head and food on the table and opportunities for education, growth, and development, which I know were things that you helped people learn about so that we could move forward. May we show our gratitude by uniting with proper mindset and gratitude, and only using what we need, and always replacing what has been taken from Mother Earth in any way, so that we sustain self-sustainable, holistic lifestyles as you and our ancestors have taught us. May we help those that don't understand that to learn that, and more importantly, implement that and pass it on generation to generation. We thank you for your guidance and strength. Please keep us and our families healthy. In your honored name, Creator. Aho. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Caroline, can you email me a link to the recording?
Okay. I will. Do I have your email?
Let me post it on
When I send
the.
out email, do you usually get it?
Yeah, I get the emails from you. Yes, you have me on the emails.
Okay.
Well, tell her what your email is, because it starts with
Yeah,
a T. It's kind of
let me write it in the chat. Hold on.
Okay.
Well, also, Miss Kennedy, the email I sent earlier. Oh no, I didn't have you on that. My fault. Sorry. So yeah, go ahead, Albert. Sorry. All right. Blessings, everybody. Have a great day and weekend. I know we have other meetings, but I just wanted to again thank you and share. Okay. Bye.
Okay. See you, John. Hey, we got to talk a little bit, John, later. When I get my phone back.
You got it. You got it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I posted it in the chat, Caroline. Thank you again.
Thank you, I see it.